there can boost the sound or not?
It's okay, Maharaj, we can manage, but we can't see you, Maharaj.
Pardon?
We can't see you.
Can that be adjusted? They say they can't see me. Probably we're on screen sharing or something. I don't know what you put.
They can see you.
He said, he's the host, he said he can't see me.
Jai, His Holiness Janananda Maharaj ki Jai.
Thanks.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Haribol.
How are you, Maharaj?
Not bad. Surviving.
Nice to see you, Maharaj.
Good to see you too, Krishna Chandra Prabhu, and all the devotees there in Auckland and New Zealand and wherever else you're from. Thank you for joining us this evening, this morning, etc. So we start with a little kirtan for 20 minutes, is that correct?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, I just get my clock watch ready. I know you're very strict on time over there in New Zealand. Yeah. It's stricter than India over there.
Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam.
I think I think you may have to mute the other devotees there, whoever's the host. Are you the host, Krishna Chandra?
No, Maharaj, but we'll get everyone to get muted.
Yeah, otherwise it'll be a little bit overlapping.
Sure.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamane Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sanyavadi Asitare Shatari Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sanyavadi Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Gadadha Shivasrati Gaurabhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasrati Gaurabhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bo, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Harinama Sankirtan Ki Jai, Brihat Madanga Ki, World ISKCON World Shravana, is it Shravanam Kirtanam Week? What was it called? Something like that. Hearing and chanting of the holy name and Shravanam Kirtanam of the Shastras, etc. Hare Krishna, all gloriously assembled devotees, Shri Radha Giridhari Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Vanchakarpatrubhyascha Kripasindhivya Vachabnam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. Jai Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namani Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvasesha Shunyavadi Pastachade Shatarine. Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. So we're going to read, and I'll try to do this. I'm going to try to share the screen with you. Is that okay? I'm going to try. I'm going to try to find, where is it? I think this is it. Can you see the screen? Yes or no? I don't know how you can say yes.
Yes, Maharaj.
Put your
Yes, we
thumb
can
up
see,
if you
Maharaj.
can see it. Put your thumb up if you can see it.
Yeah, we can
You
see.
the screen? Okay, thumbs up. Okay, we're away. So by the mercy of all of you today, I'm very fortunate to have this opportunity to remember Prabhupada and remember Prabhupada's instructions, especially when it comes to hearing. I hope you can all see as well. We really see through hearing. We may use our eyes also, of course, they're very essentially, or let's say we can do without them in one sense, but they're very useful. We can read Prabhupada's books, we can see the deities, we can do so many things by the grace of Krishna giving us eyes to see. But the real eye to see, the inner eye, is awoken by hearing attentively from the scriptures, from the spiritual master, from sadhus, hearing the right subject matter. This is the process. So I believe this is where we're reading from. Is this correct? But that's not the right place. So what can I say? It's way down. I didn't do this. I know where it is. It's way, way down the chapter. I really don't know if we're going to be able to find it. I've got it open on my book. We're coming close to it now. This is Prabhupada's poem. Just give me a second. I think we've reached it. Here we are. Got it?
Maharaj,
Okay.
I believe that the spot was right at the end of the chapter. There it is there, the December 1936.
Look at the screen now, you should see it.
Yeah.
You see it? December 1936. Can you see that?
Yes.
Or no? Yes.
Yes.
So that's what I was told was where we start. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay. We're online. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, December 1936. It's a long time ago. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was in poor health at Jagannath Puri. Abai was in Bombay. And he wanted to write his Guru Maharaj a letter. He has looked kind upon me, Abai thought. He will understand my request. And he began to write. Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances at your lotus feet. You have got many disciples, and I am one of them. But they are doing direct service to you. Some of them are brahmacharis. Some of them are sannyasis. But I am a householder. I cannot. Sometimes I give monetary help. Well, I cannot give you direct service. Is there any particular service I can do? 2 weeks later, Abai received a reply from Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj. The reply came. He said, I am fully confident that you can explain in English our thoughts and arguments to the people who are not conversant with the languages of the other members. This will do much good to yourself as well as your audience. I have every hope that you can turn yourself into a very good English preacher if you serve the mission to inculcate the novel impression of Lord Chaitanya's teachings in the people in general, as well as philosophers and religionists. Abai at once recognized this to be the same instruction he had received at their first meeting in 1922. He took it as a confirmation. There was now no doubt as to the purpose of his life. What his spiritual master had said in Calcutta in 1922 had not been a chance remark, nor had that been a chance meeting. The instruction was the same. Turn yourself into a very good English preacher. This will do much good to yourself as well as your audience. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati passed away from the mortal world on January the 1st, 1937. He had been spending his last days reading Chaitanya Charitamrita and chanting on his beads when a doctor had visited him wanting to give him an injection. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had protested, "Why are you disturbing me in this way? Simply chant Hare Krishna, that's all." amongst his last words to his disciples were, I advise all to preach the teachings of Rupa Raghunath with all energy and resources. Our ultimate goal shall be to become the dust of the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Raghunath Goswamis. You should all work conjointly under the guidance of your spiritual master with a view to serve the absolute knowledge, the personality of Godhead. You should live somehow or other without any quarrel in this mortal world, only for the service of Godhead. Do not, please, give up the service of Godhead in spite of all dangers, all criticisms, and all discomforts. Do not be disappointed, for most people in the world do not serve the personality of Godhead. Do not give up your own service, which is your everything and all. Neither reject the process of chanting and hearing of the transcendental holy name of Godhead. You should always chant the transcendental name of Godhead with patience and forbearance like a tree, and humbleness like a straw. There are many amongst you who are well acquainted and, who are well qualified and able workers. We have no other desire whatsoever. In the last days, he remained fully conscious and had given instructions until the end. He had specifically and openly ordered that the affairs of his Gaudiya Math be maintained by a 12-man governing body, which the devotees should select amongst themselves. Finally, he has said, please accept my blessings to you all, present and absent. Please bear in mind that our sole duty and religion is to spread and propagate service to the Lord and of his devotees. At 5:30 a.m. on January the 1st, he breathed his last. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. So with your permission, I'll finish there, and we'll go on to the talk. Is that okay? It's kind of a break point in the subject matter. Is that okay, Krishna Chandra or whoever, Prabhu, whoever's facilitating?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I am not going to stop the share because we're meant to share everything. Krishna consciousness is meant for sharing. So I hope I can continue sharing, although I want to change screen. I hope this will work. I can't guarantee it will. I really can't guarantee.
Before you start, is it okay if I can just do a quick intro about yourself?
Keep it real brief, and please make sure it's not this 20-year-old one, which is completely out of date. All about the holy name, week, and kirtan. It's all history now.
Sure, Maharaj, I will.
Okay, so what do I do now to get this one on the screen?
So Hare Krishna, everyone, and once again, welcome. And a warm welcome to His Holiness Janananda Maharaj. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for joining us. A quick introduction about Maharaj. His Holiness Janananda Maharaj joined ISKCON in London and was initiated by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada in 1972. And many of us must be personally knowing Maharaj, since Maharaj used to visit New Zealand almost every year. In fact, Maharaj was appointed as the temple president of Auckland in 1996, and he played a very important role in development of this ISKCON temple, as well as proposing some changes to the current building, which was designed and allowing a large capacity room that we have today. Previously, Maharaj was traveling and preaching all around the world. However, in the past few years, Maharaj has been spending a lot of time in France, and he has been working very hard with the devotees to push Srila Prabhupada's mission there. Srila Prabhupada installed Sri Radha Parish Ishwara in Paris and Krishna Balram in New Mayapur farm, which is the only remaining ISKCON property in Europe where Srila Prabhupada stayed. And Maharaj has taken a nice care in developing the community there as well. In the past, Maharaj used to be the organizer of the World Holy Name Week as well, and the Kirtan committee, standard of the committee as well for the many years. Maharaj used to see the standard of the Kirtan and organizing the World Holy Name as well. So Maharaj, thank you so much for kindly joining us, taking your time with us. So floor is yours, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Haribol, everybody. Thank you, Krishna. Is that Krishna Chandra? Thank you, Prabhu, for that very, what to say, little updated. Hare Krishna. Haribol, all glories to Prabhupada. We're very fortunate to be here in France, in this holy Tirtha. Srila Prabhupada's room here, very special room. And yeah, Hare Krishna. So now I hope to be able to share the screen. Hopefully you can all see it. Can you see the screen?
Yes, Maharaj.
Is it the verses from Nectar of Instruction? Yes?
Yes, Maharaj.
Great.
For the translation.
Okay, so I may have, it's been a very busy time right now, as always, and I may have not quite catch the theme of today's discussion, but specifically it's related to Nectar of Instruction. If I'm wrong, it's too late. If I'm right, let it be. So what I would like to do is just read the English of the 11, it's only 11 verses, through in the Nectar of Instruction. You probably have your books in front of you anyway, but if you do or don't, it's on the screen here. And we're going to be discussing a little bit about the process of hearing, the relevance of hearing in our lives, or let's say hearing from Srila Prabhupada and specifically from his books, and how sometimes interpretation or misapplication of instructions or correct application of instructions according to time, place, and circumstance is to be understood. And particularly, it's interesting you've chosen, or someone's chosen, the Nectar of Instruction as a subject matter, because this probably is one of the most easy, very small text literatures to look at this subject matter in relationship with. So let's read through the verses and try to focus on each verse step by step. We're going up a ladder here. Sometimes it's called the yoga ladder. And I know Janananda Maharaj was used to give a series of lectures or seminars on Nectar of Instruction called Shraddha to Prem. So we're going up a staircase, you could say, if you want to put it in practical terms. So look at it like that. A sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals, is qualified to make disciples all over the world. Pretty far at the beginning to the book, in a sense. I can imagine when people get the Nectar of Instruction on the street, this would be quite an interesting first verse in the eyes of the people in general. You know, one time in England, I believe in the 80s, most likely 80s or early 90s, I think it was late 80s. One of our devotees in England, who was basically, had been our Sankirtan leader for some time, and was then heading up, you could say, what we would now call online Sankirtan. He was one of the earlier ones in our room to really develop the various innovative ways of distributing Prabhupada's books through, they didn't have internet then, but through mail orders and different outlets. He was going to all kinds of outlets to try to introduce or connect with different groups to distribute Prabhupada's books. So he did one thing. He went to the one of these what do you call them? These companies that do a survey on your products to give you feedback on your products as to the relevance of your product in the, let's say, the field in which you're trying to plant the seeds. That's their profession, a survey company. I got a specific name, but I hope you get the idea. So this professional company studied all of our books that we were distributing on Sankirtan particularly. And they said, well, Bhagavad Gita, Nectar of Devotion, these are basically, we won't discuss those, they're kind of your scriptures. But the books, small books that we're distributing on Sankirtan, and funnily enough, they looked at Science of Self-Realization. I can't remember all of them, but all the small books, and including, I don't know if the Higher Taste was there then, but coming back and Chant and Be Happy and all these other books, they studied them all as far as they felt that the relevance or the value is to the public. And interestingly enough, their conclusion was the best book for public was Nectar of Instruction. Quite to the contrary of everything we thought. They didn't have a very high regard for some books like Chant and Be Happy. They were very impressed by Nectar of Instruction. And this is not like a confirmation or affirmation, therefore that's a fact. But that was just interesting to see their analysis, because they said, this book makes it clear where you guys are at. Exactly what your goals are, your means to achieve it, what your philosophy is. It's not like covering anything up. It's it's telling people straightforwardly, where the people are at as well as we, and they really appreciated Nectar of Instruction. It's interesting. A very important book. It's kind of a synopsis of the Nectar of Devotion in a practical sense, you could say. Anyway, we'll go on with these verses. So I just remembered that when I read this first verse, what people might think. Quite a striking statement for the first verse. Second verse, one's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities. 1, eating more than necessary or collecting more funds than required. And this is a devotee sitting in front of me eating his breakfast right now, listening to this. 2, over endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. 3, talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. 4, practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. 5, associating with worldly minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. 6, being greedy for mundane achievements. I'm sure we can all relate to this statement of Rupa Goswami of how sometimes these 6 entangling activities still enter into our lives in various ways. And we certainly don't have time to talk about the details of these verses today. I'm sure others will be talking about details. But we go on to the third one. So that's, first of all, we could say a general principle of any yoga path, controlling the senses, basic. And in devotional service, then first thing Rupa Goswami says are 6 unfavorable activities. Interesting to note, we heard from Srutapa Prabhu the other day how Lord Brahma was advised by the Lord in the Chaturshloki to directly and indirectly search for after the absolute truth. Indirectly means this. It means finding out that which is negative, that which is an obstacle on our path, that which is detrimental or entangling on our spiritual path, negatively speaking. Removing those negativities. So that's the first thing. And directly is the positive thing. So here are the positive things. There are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service. Being enthusiastic. Without enthusiasm, we will get nowhere. Of course, enthusiasm and passion sometimes overlap, and Prabhupada said enthusiasm means acting with intelligence in Krishna consciousness. So if we haven't got intelligence, which we don't generally, we have to hear from those who do. Endeavoring with confidence, being patient, acting according to regulated principles such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, which is like Shravanam, Kirtanam week, hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna. 5, abandoning the association of non-devotees. 6, following the footsteps of the previous acharyas. And these 6 principles undoubtedly assure the complete success of pure devotional service. Very specific and precise, succinct statements, which are very deep, but you have to go deep to say specifically understand the detailed application. Many instructions in Nectar Devotion, particularly Nectar Instruction, are general, but to get the specifics, one has to approach a spiritual master or association of saintly persons to understand what is applicable to us or me or whatever it is according to time, place, and circumstance. But certain things are general. They're all general here. Abandoning the association of non-devotees, for instance. So, I mean, what can you say? It's so relevant in our lives. How we do that is a detail. And for one, different depends on the ashram, the varna, and stage of life, and set for the places we're living, the local situation, many different factors, our occupations, and many times a level of maturity in Krishna consciousness. There are many things to be taken into account in that statement. Following the footsteps of previous acharyas, we have to know how that to be. And sometimes we jump over and we take things which we like from some other acharya who is at a different time, place, and circumstance, preaching a different aspect, emphasizing a different aspect of Krishna consciousness, and so on and so forth. You can look at all these various statements like that. I will go on to the next page. Next verse, text 4. Offering gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasadam, and offering prasadam are the 6 symptoms of love shared by one devotee and another. So in the first 3 verses, you could say there's a, what do we say, a structure there to support devotional service or to enhance our devotional service behavior, specifically various types of Vaishnav practices and behaviors and so on and so forth required. And once that's, of course, any stage, these number 4 may be applied, but specifically in the sense of love shared by one devotee and another. When we're applying these previous principles in our lives, then number 4 becomes not just some social gathering. There's not just some, friends and enemies or, because we're conditioned in certain ways. But this is going much deeper. And to understand what it means to accept charitable gifts, giving in charity also will vary according to time, place, and circumstance. But it's specifically now to cultivate in that association. This is how we churn loving feelings amongst devotees. This is how we churn community development. It's not just based on an external, it's going deeper, it's an internal thing here, going deeper and deeper and deeper. But without the foundation, it will not go very far. So if we're still failing to control our senses, or we're still, inflicted, let's say, by the tendency to embrace or apply unfavorable things in our devotional service and not favorable ones, then there's not going to be any loving exchange between devotees. It's going to be some kind of show, ulterior motives. It's going to be, mundane of some kind or another, with some kind of agenda, self-agenda. It's not going to be a Krishna in the center. And the 5th one, then how do we associate with those devotees? One should mentally honor the devotee who chants the holy name of Lord Krishna. One should offer humble obeisances to the devotee who has undergone spiritual initiation and is engaged, notice the word diksha, and is engaged in worshipping the deity. And one should associate with and faithfully serve that pure devotee who is advanced in undeviated devotional service. and his heart is completely devoid of the propensity to criticize others. This verse and purport are, of course, perhaps one of the most analyzed, discussed, and I wouldn't say debatable, but used in that sense, verses in the Nectar of Instruction. We are not going to touch on it today. It's an essential verse, which is spend weeks just discussing that one verse. Next 6. Being situated in his original Krishna conscious position, a pure devotee does not identify with the body. This is a very simple statement, but in context of our discussion later on is a key factor. Such a devotee should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. Indeed, one should overlook a devotee as having a body born in a low family, a body with a bad complexion, a deformed body, or a diseased or infirm body. According to ordinary vision, such imperfections may seem prominent in the body of a pure devotee. But despite such seeming defects, the body of a pure devotee cannot be polluted. It is exactly like the waters of the Ganges, which sometimes during the rainy season are full of bubbles, foam, and mud. The Ganges waters do not become polluted. Those who are advanced in spiritual understanding will bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water. Very important understanding. Again, another subject which is in of itself so important and to understand and to realize. Is that Tirtha Bodhisha Lilena Kai Janesha Vigesha Seeva Gokara. What's the first line I've forgotten? But one who identifies themselves with its body as being self, one who considers my family members as mine, one who considers my place of birth as worshipable, and this material body, which is made of 3 elements, as the self, etc., goes to a holy place of pilgrimage just to take a dip in the water there, but has this material conception of life, is no better than an ass or a cow ass. We're not hearing properly. It's such an important thing to hear properly. And more important than knowledge, just foundation statements, sutras. More important than knowledge in one sense is knowing how to apply it. It's so easy just to quote this and quote that and so on. But it's the correct application of knowledge. Otherwise, no realization will ever come. It remains on the mental and physical platform. Curative disease. Medicine has to be taken according to the condition of the patient. Relevant medicine, but according to the condition of the patient. We'll go on to the next one. The holy name, character, pastimes, and activities of Krishna are all transcendentally sweet like sugar candies. Now we're setting, generally speaking, when making any kind of what's the word? Mangalacharanam prayers, introduction, nectar of instruction, as you'll see later on. I won't even mention what it said. But anyway, this is setting the goal. The goal is Krishna. The holy name, character, pastimes, and activities of Krishna are all transcendently sweet like sugar candy. Although the tongue of one afflicted by the jaundice of avidya, ignorance, cannot taste anything sweet, it is wonderful that simply by, and note this, carefully chanting these sweet names every day, carefully, anudinam, to chant with great care the names of Krishna, attentively every day. A natural relish awakens within his tongue, and his disease is gradually destroyed at the root. Not on the surface, at the root. We've got to get the root out. And that is by the grace of Krishna, by carefully chanting the sweet names of Krishna, or Srimad Bhagavatam, the sound of the transcendental sound in the form of the holy name, in the form of Bhagavatam, whatever form it takes. But the pure sound coming through the pure source, through the disciplic succession. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's time fully. Utilize one's time, full time, time fully. 24 hours a day in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Braj. Now we get into the essence. We should reside in Braj, Golok Vrindavan Dham. Of course, with this lockdown, we can't go to Vrindavan. It's 2 years almost now since we were able to go. How long do we have to wait? And serve Krishna. Very important. Serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. Follow in the footsteps, Satovrite, of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached in his devotional service. The holy place known as Mathura is spiritually superior to Vaikuntha, the transcendental world, because the Lord appeared there. Superior to Mathura Puri is the transcendental forest of Vrindavan, because of Krishna's Rasa Lila pastimes. And superior to the forest of Vrindavan is Govardhana Hill, for it was raised by the divine hand of Sri Krishna and was the site of his various loving pastimes. And above all, the super excellent Sri Radha Kund stands supreme, for it is overflooded with the ambrosial nectarian prema of the Lord of Gokul, Sri Krishna. Where then is that intelligent person who is unwilling to serve this divine Radha Kund, which is situated at the foot of Govardhan Hill? Oh, we want to go to Radha Kund right now. And there, what will we do in Radha Kund? In the Shastras, it is said that of all types of fruitive workers, he who is advanced in knowledge of the higher values of life is favored by the Supreme Lord Hari. Out of many such people who are advanced in knowledge, Gyanis, one who is practically liberated by virtue of his knowledge may take to devotional service. He is superior to the others. However, one who has actually attained prema, pure love of Krishna, is superior to him. The gopis are exalted above all the advanced devotees because they are always totally dependent upon Sri Krishna, the transcendental coward boy. Among the gopis, Srimati Radharani is the most dear to Krishna. Her Kund, lake, is as profoundly dear to Lord Krishna as this most beloved of the gopis. Who then will not reside at Radha Kund and in the spiritual body surcharged with ecstatic devotional feelings, aprakrita bhav, render loving service to the divine couple, Sri Sri Radha Govinda, who perform their Ashtakaliya Leela, their eternal eightfold daily pastimes. Indeed, those who execute devotional service on the banks of Radha Kund are the most fortunate people in the universe. And the last verse of Nectar of Instruction: of the many objects of favored delight, and of all the lovable damsels of Brajabhumi, Srimati Radharani is certainly the most treasured object of Krishna's love. And in every respect, her divine Kund is described by great sages as similarly dear to him. Undoubtedly, Radha Kund is very rarely attained, even by the great devotees. Therefore, it is even more difficult for ordinary devotees to attain. If one simply bathed once within those holy waters, one's pure love of Krishna is fully aroused. Jai. Let us all go to Radhakund now. And now I'm going to few more slides. So it seems to be clearly obvious that nectar of instruction is indicating that in reality, whatever we are, wherever we are, we should go to Radhakund. Who then? If we look at text 10 and 11, you could look at 8 and 9 as well, but 10 and 11, who then will not reside at Radhakund? Question. You're crazy if you don't want to reside at Radhakund. Right? Maybe we are crazy. Next verse, 11, it says, a few things it says, but if one simply bathes once within those holy waters, one's pure love of Krishna is fully aroused. Simple process, huh? Don't have to do anything else. Somehow or another, get a ticket to India. Somehow or another, it's difficult right now. Maybe you live in India, it's easy. But get a ticket, get to Vrindavan, catch a bus or something or another, get to Radhakund and take a dip. And that's it. It's all over. Back to Godhead. Fully aroused Krishna Prema. Sounds easy. Wow, that's great. Some people think it's as easy as that. Well, Prabhupada does write in the purport, therefore everyone interested in Krishna consciousness should utilize, should ultimately take shelter of Radhakund and execute devotional service there throughout one's life. This is a conclusion of Rupa Goswami in the 10th verse of Upadeshamrita. It's a conclusion. Anyone interested, we should go. Ultimately take shelter of Radhakund. But notice the word ultimate. Ultimate may have different meanings. It doesn't mean necessarily. It's like you have a goal to achieve it. It doesn't mean you reach the goal immediately. Our ultimate goal to take shelter of Radhakund. Anyway, sometimes misinterpreted. It is stated that a devotee will at once develop pure love of Krishna in the wake of the gopis if he once takes a bath in Radhakund. Makes it very simple. It's the nature of a conditioned soul to search for verses which qualify their sentiments. Whether they're relevant or properly understood is not the point. It's the nature of a conditioned soul to find some support for our conditioning, or whether material, spiritual perspective. It's a nature to take some kind of justification for what we're doing, or support from somebody, somehow or another, to try to gather things to support our illusion. Srila Rupa Goswami recommends that even if one cannot live permanently on the banks of Radhakund, he should at least take a bath in the lake as many times as possible. This is a most important item in the execution of devotional service. Further evidence to justify, let's say, living at Radhakund or taking bath in Radhakund, etc., etc. Living entities who are to sit there and listen to Astakaliya Leela. Living entities who are eager to return home to the transcendental kingdom of God, Goloka Vrindavan, by means of attaining their spiritual bodies, Siddhadeha, should live at Radhakund. So if you're eager to return home and actually awaken your spiritual body, you should live at Radhakund. That's what it says. Take shelter of the confidential serving maids of Sri Radha, and under their direction, engage constantly in her service. That might not be so difficult, so easy. Excuse me. I better find one of those confidential serving maids. I better find someone who knows who they are there. And if I find someone who tells me they're one of the confidential serving maids, oh yes, and one of the manjaris, etc., then I'm perfectly situated. This is the most exalted method for those engaged in devotional service under the protection of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we could say there's supportive evidence there to take the conclusion of the nectar of instruction, the most important statement of the nectar of instruction, or instruction in the nectar of instruction, Pradeshamrita, as something I should apply now. Is it something I should apply now, or is it a goal I should aim at? Well, that's a question to ask. Let's look at this from a different angle. And now another statement in the purport: if by great fortune one gets an opportunity to come to Radhakund and bathe even once, he can develop his transcendental love for Krishna exactly as the gopis did. It is also recommended that one should live on the banks of Radha Kund and should be absorbed in the loving service of the Lord. One should bathe there regularly and give up all material conceptions, taking shelter of Sri Radha and her assistant gopis. If one is thus constantly engaged during his lifetime, after giving up the body, he will return home back to Godhead to serve Sri Radha in the same way as he contemplated during his life on the banks of Radha Kund. The conclusion is that to live on the banks of the Radha Kund and to take baths there daily constitute the highest perfection of devotional service. Highest perfection. After giving up all material conceptions, giving up the body, one may become eligible. Ishaya charya serasi majya mukhe bolo hari hari. Ishaya charya kabe shura habiman kabe hama herabo Shri Vrindavan. If we want to enter Vrindavan, one has to become completely freed from all traces of desire for sense gratification. Now that puts a different picture on the whole subject matter. And this is the angle we're now going to look at. Okay, we're going to bathe in Radha Kund. Here we are. It's Bahulashtami, which according to Shastra is not the actual day of the appearance of Radha Kund anyway. But then let's take it as being it. And there they are, thousands and thousands of devotees, maybe from different places, maybe from Vrindavan, taking a dip in Radha Kund. Well, of course, what can I say? We've done it ourselves. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj did it occasionally, but not generally. Prabhupada, I have no record, but I'm sure he may, I'm not sure. Maybe he did bathe in Radha Kund once, but generally not. But nonetheless, this is a tradition, it's a festival, and it brings great awakening of inspiration and enthusiasm for the service of Krishna. Whether we're eligible or not eligible, whether we really dip in Radha Kund or don't really dip in Radha Kund is another thing. It's like many things we do in devotional service, studying scriptures, but how much are we really actually surrendering? How much are we really absorbing? How much are we really applying in our lives? Everything is relevant, but it has to be known when and where, time, place, and circumstance, which will please Krishna. It's very pleasing to a teacher when he sees the students follow the relevant instructions and not. And Prabhupada tells a story of the immature vet, apprentice vet, who watched his teacher one day cure a horse that had swallowed a melon or something, or a lemon or something like that. It was choking. So the immature vet apprentice thought, oh, that was quite easy. The teacher just took a stick and tap, tap, tap on his throat, and gradually the lemon flipped out of the mouth of the horse. So then he saw a man with a good tree. He had the apprentice that was walking along, thinking, that was quite easy. I can do the same thing easily. I don't need to go apprenticeship to learn that one. So then he saw a man who had a big kind of growth on his neck, some kind of gutrism. Said, I can cure you very easily. He said, sit down. He took a big stick and started bang, 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 and burst the thing and killed the guy because he didn't know what he was doing. Time, place, and circumstance. So what is one man's meat is another man's poison. It may not be always relevant. That's why so many different scriptures in time, place, and circumstance are there, because that's all they can digest. All they can digest is stop, having sex with your mother, or stop killing animals, or something like that, or whatever it is, some kind of don't do's. Time, place, and circumstance. So no comment on those great devotees, but it may or may not be relevant. And here's sorry about the focus, not a very good focus, but a beautiful. What does this remind us of Krishna? So it's wonderful. Just to have the opportunity to see the manifest, whatever form Radha Kund takes, the manifest aspect where our conditioned senses still purifies us if our heart, if we're in the right state. Just like the previous verses of Nectar of Instruction prepare us. They are preparatory verses, one by one by one, so that we can, it's not just in our conditioned state that we go to Radha Kund and take a dip and think that's it. It's to prepare us so we can actually approach Radha Kund in the right. Even you see in that verse, we'll see in a minute, I won't quote it, but how difficult it is to enter Radha Kund. It's not as easy as it sounds. Another nice shot of Radhakund, and yet another one. So many beautiful shots, which are inspiring for us to aspire for that highest goal. The instructions, we shouldn't stick at the neophyte platform. Prabhupada did not write his book so that we remain neophytes. In other words, just rules and regulations. They are there, and they may always be there in a sense, for even if one's an advanced devotee in the nectar of devotion, which Goswami said, one still follows those rules and regulations for the sake of others at least, regulations and so on. But ultimately our goal is spontaneous devotional service, bhava bhakti, prema bhakti. This is what nectar instruction is emphasizing, but it's also emphasizing that we have to go through the stages. Like if we want to get a PhD, you don't start with a PhD, you go step by step by step, but you may know at a certain stage, you may not even know that in the beginning. But at a certain stage, one may know the goal is PhD. At a certain stage, we may know that the goal is Krishna Prema, whatever form that may take. But we may say that in the beginning, we don't know what it means. We don't really know the implications or the nature of what that means. We may have read it, but you can't absorb it. It's like a foreign language. As one matures in devotional service, then that subject matter becomes, as in any education system, it becomes understandable. But we have to go through the steps, the process, A, B, C, D. Another shot of Radhakund. And move on now. Now we'll look at the other aspect. In the Shastras, okay, we've read that, verses 10, 11. So let's read the last line of those verses. Who then will not reside at Radhakund and in a spiritual body, not in a material body, a spiritual body, surcharged with ecstatic devotional feelings? Have we got that? Ecstatic devotional feelings, render loving service to the divine couple, Shri Shri Radha Govinda, who perform the Astakaliya Leela. Are we on that level? Their eternal eightfold daily pastimes, indeed those who execute devotional service. Okay, fair enough. The most fortunate persons, but are we on that type of devotional service which is mentioned here? Probably not. Even Narada Muni couldn't enter it. And then the last verse, undoubtedly Radhakund is very rarely attained even by the great devotees, even by great, great devotees. Therefore, it is even more difficult for ordinary devotees to attain. So if we think we're a great devotee, best of luck. But maybe we're not so great devotees. So it's even difficult for great devotees, not to speak of ordinary devotees, we Goswami says. The purport, or purports, Prabhupada says, Radhakund is very rarely attained, even by the great personalities, fully engaged in devotional service, not to speak of ordinary devotees who are only engaged in the practice of Vaidhi Bhakti. And hardly we can perform Vaidhi Bhakti. What to speak of the real practice of Vaidhi Bhakti? We're struggling with that. So how on earth are we going to attain Radhakund? In this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati writes that even great sages and great devotees like Narada and Sanaka do not get an opportunity to come to Radhakund to take their bath, what to speak of enter in. What then to speak of ordinary devotees? It is stated that the devotee, I won't read that. You can awaken your love. In the wake of gopis, if he once takes a bath in Radhakund, Sri Rupa Goswami recommends even once, is that even if one cannot live permanently on the banks of Radhakund, he should at least take a bath. That's more or less the same thing we read. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, however, writes in this connection that Sri Radhakund is the most select place for those interested in advancing their devotional service in the wake of the lady friends and confidential serving maids of Srimati Radharani. This is, we've already heard. Basically speaking, are we really at that platform? Most likely not. One time Achyutananda Prabhu asked Prabhupada, or said, he was talking about devotees going to Radhakund or people living in Radhakund. They also wear the Radhakund Mati Tilak. Prabhupada said there's no harm, but they should understand what is Radhakund and how to deal with Radhakund. Raghunath Das Goswami showed how to live in Radhakund. Sankhya Purvaka Namagana Natibi Kalavasani Krito He was circumambulating Radhakund, falling down, making a mark. That is Radhakund Vasi. Sankhya Purvaka Namagana Natebi. Not only counted holy names, but offering obeisances so many hundreds of times in. That is Radhakund. He's so much vairagya he showed. He can take bath in Radhakund. First of all, you do this like Raghunath Das Goswami. Sankhya Purvaka Namagana Natebi Kalavasani Kuto Nidraha Viharakari Vijito Chatyanta Dino Chayo. So following in the footsteps of the Goswamis, we can't jump over. Baba's saying here we have to follow that. If you want to actually enter into Radhakund as is, we have to be in that platform of devotional service of Raghunath Das Goswami, which we're probably not. When in 1976, when Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, we were there, many devotees were there, and devotees were going on pilgrimage. We went to Radhakund one day, and actually at that time it was interesting because in the end of 1975, Prabhupada finished the Nectar of Instruction, and in early 76 it was published, and it just came available, at least to us, at Mayapur Festival. They were distributing the Nectar of Instruction at the Mayapur Festival. It was so exciting hearing this subject matter. It just came out early in February 76 or something. We were all getting Nectar of Instruction. And they were going off to Radhakund and diving in and swimming around and having water sports in the Kund, playing fool. When Prabhupada heard that devotees were playing like this, he said, no more bathing in Radhakund. It's not an absolute statement. It was a statement according to the situation there and then. We're not ready. We're not ready for it. That was the point. Devotees were misunderstanding and misbehaving. So then, we're going. Persons envious of the Lord suppose that Radhakund and other places, such places, are for those like themselves. So we wish them well. This is now we're hearing some statements, and I should have put the reference. This is now we're talking from Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj. Persons envious of the Lord suppose that Radhakund and other such places are for those like themselves. So we wish them well and conscientiously continue with their duties in service to the Lord. Residence at Radhakund is obtained by exceedingly good fortune. It is not a suitable place for materialists like myself, who thus being unable to directly reside there, may do so only mentally. Okay, this is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj teaching us. He did reside at Radhakund sometimes, but that was in the house which his father constructed there at Radhakund. And we'll hear that later probably. But there at Radhakund, there's only one or two occasions, which at least with his disciples, that he actually took a bath in Radhakund. Otherwise, he wouldn't take baths. And he instructed his disciples likewise. In fact, you may hear that he instructed Srila Prabhupada at Radhakund. Many times he would speak at Radhakund, and he would speak on the Vedas. He spoke on the Vedas, and they wanted him to speak on Leela. He spoke on the Ishopanishad or some Vedic literature, and people were not very interested. They wanted to hear some Leela. He knew that they were not qualified. Their hearts were not pure to hear Leela. So he wouldn't speak it. He only spoke it on one occasion. He spoke on Astakalya Leela one time with his disciples. Even he said, "You are not actually eligible to hear this yet, but because it has to be known, so in the future." So he did speak on it once. This is our goal. But otherwise, he'd never speak on these things in public, confidentially. Even Prabhupada said, if I had one disciple who was qualified to speak on these things. It's not that Prabhupada said we don't boycott the gopis, but we should have to understand our accessibility to these pastimes or accessibility to these places depends on our adhikar, our eligibility. The harmonious Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, defines Radhakund as the reservoir of all services, expressions of adoration that Radhika and her damsels constantly offer to their lover, Krishna. Radhakund, he says, is protected like a fortress by the associates of Sri Radhika, who prohibit persons of contrary consciousness. Even Lakshmi Devi is not allowed in, Narada Muni is, because there is an element of reverence. There's an element of, let's say, awe and reverence there in their consciousness. What to speak of persons who have any contrary, envy of any kind, any self-centeredness of any kind, any pride of any kind, anything, any material motivation or desire of any kind. There's no question of getting anywhere near Radhakund. Unfortunately, the luckless Prakriti Sahajas think themselves qualified to reside there and attempt to pollute the entirely transcendental Radhakund with their materialistic ideas. But Radhakund is far beyond anything of this mundane world and even more exalted than Govardhan. Hence, the ill-fated Prakriti Sahajas cannot actually live at Radhakund, nor touch even a drop of her sacred water. We may also be affected by that. It's not just some group of people. We're also Prakriti Bhaktas, neophytes, who still have material desire, who still identify with their conditioned mind and body sometimes, and are controlled by the emotions which swell up in their minds, or the demands of their senses, or the bodily condition which they happen to be in, etc., etc. So what say eligibility do we have to enter there? None. Not need to touch even a drop of her sacred water. We may be affected by that, cheap, making Krishna consciousness very cheap. That just we'll be chanting a little bit and doing a little bit, we think that we can jump over. It doesn't work like that. The ability to enter into the mercy of the residents of Radhakund only, the most internal associates of the Lord. To enter in Vrindavan is only possible by the Brij Bas's mercy. Bathing in Radhakund, he said, is not possible with mundane, contaminated senses, and thus not achieved by dunking. We don't know what that means. You dunk your biscuit. You dip your biscuit in your tea or coffee or whatever you drink. Hopefully you don't drink those things, maybe into your hot milk or something. You dunk your biscuit. So this body is just like a biscuit. And you cannot attain Radhakund simply with mundane, contaminated senses, and not achieved by dunking this body or bag of bones and flesh into Radhakund. If they bathe in Radhakund without accepting the purport of a Takshri Krishna Namadi, the Bhavad Graham Indriya Seva Mukhi Jiva, they will be deprived of Krishna's mercy. We have to understand that this realization, Krishna, transcendental nature of Krishna is not revealed by one who still has material perception. It's revealed in the heart of one whose senses are completely purified by Shravanam Nadi Shutakiti Karudai, by the purifying process of hearing the subject matter of Krishna Katha, yes, but at the right time, right place, from the right person, etc. We have to hear from the correct source and hear correctly relevant instructions to help us to progress in spiritual life, not all at once. Aprakritavas, transcendental residence on the banks of Radhakund, and an aprakrita snan, transcendental bathing of waters saturated in the nectar of prema, means to become wholly aloof from all desire for material sense enjoyment, completely aloof from it, and up to the end of life to constantly perform manasa bhajan, deep devotional worship, with one-pointed submission to Srimati Radhika, and after shedding the mortal body, to attain one's eternal spiritual form and intently perform direct eternal service to Srimati Radhika. One who actually bathes in Radhakund in this matter attains this topmost desirable boon. Boon, I think it should be, not boom. Boom. We'll have, if we're not on that level, we might get a boom. We'll blow up. Boon. I typed this last night, so please excuse some of the typing because it's not in the database. And the next one. This, by the way, many of these quotes are from Bhakti Vikash Maharaj's book, Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav, which is a fantastic book. Whatever you may think, is one of the most relevant books other than Prabhupada's books, which is available to anyone. It's so important to understand Srila Prabhupada's mission deeper and deeper, and just to see, you could say the root of Srila Prabhupada's mercy, how it's coming through. There's more statements. Govardhan and Radhakund were Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's supreme objects of worship. This is about it. He considered his gurus eternally served there, but he will go there to serve them and return to a lower level of Govardhan. This was statements of his disciples who were there with him. He would go there to serve his guru, but then he would go elsewhere to a lower level. He instructed his disciples not to live independently there. It should only be to serve their gurus at the mat in Radhakund. Not that we go there on our independent trips thinking we can attain something higher. It's revealed, Radhakund reveals herself. Radharani reveals the truth of Radhakund. Anyone who has anything displeasing to her Lord in attitude, behavior, mentality, everything and anything will not receive that mercy. They'll receive that mercy in a different way. They remain in ignorance, in darkness. He rarely bathed there. He would take a little water. He ordered his disciples to never put their feet in Radhakund, but become fully absorbed in the Radhakund of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, of the devotional, practicing devotional service, the ocean of devotional service. This is the order. In text 8, we see the essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's time 24 hours. In this way, one should reside in Vraj, Goloka Vrindavan Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. And this is our good fortune. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada. Out of humility, they show us how to relate to the Holy Dham, how to relate to the scriptures, etc. But in reality, they are eternal associates of the Lord. They are confidential. They are the confidential devotees of Golok Vrindavan who have come to this material world in Sadhaka Rupa forms to give us their association by giving us relevant instructions to follow, so that we may awaken our dormant love of God and may become eligible to enter Vrindavan, to enter into Radhakund, etc. This is a nice statement, when am I eager to understand the literature given by the Goswamis, then I shall be able to understand the transcendental loving affairs of Radha and Krishna. As like Prabhupada says with Bhagavatam, we have to start from the beginning, step by step by step. Although it's all sugar cane, we may not be ready. We may get indigestion if we eat too much. Rupa Goswami was the leader of the 6 Goswamis, and to guide our activities, these are some statements from the Nectar of Instruction, actually, in the preface. Now, if you read a book, it's important to read the introduction, the preface or preface, whatever way you pronounce it. Prabhupada's preface or preface to this little book is very, very relevant. Funnily enough, it was written on, let me see the date now. It was written, we just passed the day of, today we just had Bhagavad. This was written on September the 20th, 1975. It was written on the day of Bhadra Purnima. It was the day of Vishnu Mahotsav, the day Prabhupada accepted sannyas. You see a picture behind me, if you see later on, of that picture of Prabhupada holding a danda. So it was written on that day in the Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan, September 20th, 1975. And funny enough, it was the same day this year, September the 20th, at least here in France, some places 21st. Same day, so many years ago, 46 years ago, whatever it was. Prabhupada completed this Nectar of Instruction preface. And in that preface, these are some statements from the preface. Sri Rupa was the leader of all the Goswamis, and to guide our activities, he gave us the Upadeshamrita, the Nectar of Instruction to follow. Rupa Goswami gave us Upadeshamrita so that we may become pure Vaishnavas. In all spiritual affairs, one's first duty is to control his mind and senses. Unless one controls his mind and senses, he cannot make any advancement in spiritual life. One must promote himself to the platform of goodness, sattva gun, by following the instructions of Rupa Goswami. So those first verses of the Nectar of Instruction to bring us basically to the platform of sattva guna, and then under the direction of pure devotees progress to the platform of Shuddha sattva, pure goodness, not just materialistically material goodness, but transcendental goodness. And when we come to that platform of Vasudeva state, then Vasudeva reveals himself, or can reveal himself accordingly to our surrender. Advancement in Krishna consciousness, and those Prabhupada said everything will be revealed. He doesn't say that we learn it or that we get it. It's revealed. If you pay money, you might get what you want. But Krishna consciousness, the price here is a surrender. Surrender to the pure devotee of the Lord and taking shelter of their instructions. And then the Lord, being pleased with our service to his dear devotees, may reveal himself. Advancement in Krishna consciousness depends on the attitude of the follower. Very important statement. A follower of the Krishna conscious movement should become a perfect Goswami. To achieve the highest success in life by becoming a Goswami and then a pure devotee of the Lord, one must follow the instructions known as Upadeshamrita. So notice that to achieve the highest success by becoming a Goswami and then a pure devotee, one must follow the instructions. Follow one by one. Start where we are, which have been given by Rupa Goswami. Sri Rupa Goswami has given many other books, such as Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Vidagdha Madhava, and Lalita Madhava, but Upadeshamrita constitutes the first instructions for neophyte devotees. First instructions for neophytes. One should follow these instructions very strictly, then it will be easier to make one's life successful. Hare Krishna. Okay. Now, so stop. I don't think I stopped it yet. How do I stop? Whoops, what am I doing here? How do I stop the screen share? Is it, huh?
You have already,
Stop.
Maharaj.
Oh, that was clever. I didn't know how I did that. I found a shortcut way of stopping the screen share. So, yeah. So we are now at 10:30, and I guess you get, if anyone's still there, I guess you get the point of the many devotees, they kind of harp in on these last 2 or 3 verses of Nectar Instruction as if we're already eligible, or we can dive straight in there. We should know what they are, and we should know the means to attain it, and we should know what we have to do to attain that level. We shouldn't just stay. Like you've ever been in a swimming pool? When you're 4-year-old, they have this little swimming pool where the water is like 6 inches deep. You ever seen that? If you're a 25-year-old surfer or a diver, that isn't very interesting. It's not for you. If you stay there, you think there's something wrong with this guy. He's 24, he was a professional diver, and he's paddling around with the 3-year-old kids in 6 inches of water. And it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And then at a certain point, you can't go anymore because you're out of your depth, unless you can swim. And even if you can swim, at a certain point, maybe the waves get too big. You get drowned. But for a shark or a fish, that's fun, natural habitat. We've got to know the instructions for our actual nature that we're in, not the one that someone else is in. This is a great science. This is why it's the science of nectar devotion. It's a great science of knowing, but we should know the goal. We don't know the goal. If you only know most of you are Indian devotees, I think, online. Not all, but most. And as I said yesterday, most of the men are generally attached to cricket. So it's a little different, but if you're white, you might be into rugby or football or something. You have to know what the goal is. If you don't know what the goal is, you may be really good at kicking the ball around to each other, but you're never going to win the game. You got to know what the goal is too. But you can't just, you've got to know what the means are to reach the goal, the rules, the regulations. Otherwise you'll get caught offside or fouling somebody or whatever it may be. You've got to know what the rules are. And you've got to know how to play, positively speaking too. Knowing the rules, it's the same with driving or anything. You've got to know these things to reach the goal. You don't reach the goal first of all. The similar in Krishna consciousness, the do's and don'ts are essential if we want to reach the goal. We've got to understand we're beginners. Everyone starts as a beginner. We have to know and move forward. We don't stay beginners forever. We don't spend the whole game just playing the ball back and forth. We have to know how to reach that goal. And when we reach the goal, that's another thing. Of course, that doesn't mean to say when we reach the goal, that's the end of it either. It's ever progressing. But we have to know what the goal is of our lives. Aim for that, keep that goal in mind and know how it's like if we want to go from here to Auckland, you can't drive there, but we have to know the means of reaching Auckland, what plane to catch, what visa I need. That alone doesn't ensure us of reaching Auckland, but we have to know the process to reach Auckland. We can, but we should know. Why do we want to reach Auckland? Because we hear about it from those who know about it. So we hear about Radhakund, we hear about Krishna Lila from those who know, but that doesn't mean we're there. We have to follow their direction. How do we get there? How do we get there? Hearing, Kinvadinam, Anudinam, we have to hear the holy name very carefully from the mouth of pure devotees of the Lord, and they teach us the process. Same thing in scripture, they teach us through their purports particularly how to understand these subject matters. Otherwise, we can easily get the wrong impression. Purports are the most important part of the scripture. Okay, I'm going to finish now. It's 10:30 plus here, and it should be 8:30 plus there. And we're open to any questions or comments if you wish. We're going to read some more things, but our time is short.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much. Before we ask anyone for any question and answers, I think we had His Holiness Devamrita Maharaj, but I think he's left. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Oh, he's there.
Graciousness, Maharaj, at your lotus feet. Oh, haven't you such an inspiration for us all here in France? Thank you so much. I only pray one day we can follow in your footsteps and have a preaching center like the ones I dream of, those preaching centers here in France. The real thing at the root, as Prabhupada gave us, preaching Krishna consciousness in a way that people can drink the nectar. And one day I pray that in Paris we'll have one. Please come.
I thank you for this erudite, heartfelt shower of nectar, presenting nectar of instruction so wonderfully. I hung on to every word.
Krishna.
When you spoke in the beginning about this marketing firm in the UK, I believe, analyzing Prabhupada's books to give an opinion about their positioning, you reminded me of what happened at the BBT in Los Angeles in 1975 when we sent Nectar of Instruction to the printer, the first printing.
Wow.
The trustee decided we should print 10,000 copies, which during that time, the huge book distribution explosion was a very small number. His reasoning was that it's esoteric book and it would be inaccessible to the public. He informed Prabhupada, and Prabhupada wrote back to the BBT, why 10,000? This book is for mass distribution. Print 50,000.
Wow. All right.
He said,
Yeah, we were
this book.
Carry on.
He said, this book will teach the people what is morality.
Wow. All right. Mode of goodness. Fantastic. And we were just doing in trilogies in England with the Ishopanishad, and can't remember the other book, Matchless Gifts. We were doing trilogies, but there's hundreds, tens of thousands of these trilogies. It was so exciting with Jayatita. We'd sit down and pack them in the boxes and then send them out on Sankirtan. Amazing. Amazing. Hare Krishna, faith in the Guru's instruction. Thank you, Maharaj, for that wonderful nectar. Hare Krishna. You're a servant. Anything else?
Thank you, His Holiness Advaita Maharaj. Is there any other question or comments that any of the devotees like to ask?
I can say one more thing then, since everyone is being so reticent at such a glorious moment. Reading your Vyasa Puja offering to Srila Prabhupada, I was wondering, how did you manifest such poetic abilities? It must just be the outpouring of the bhakti heart, but I relished the poem very much.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, what can I say in your breast? I think it's just the association of Vaishnavas. Sometimes something useful may come out. I don't know if it did or didn't. It's what it is. But sometimes in the association of devotees, sometimes things come out. And I say, I don't know. It's a hard one to say. Sometimes these states of madness sometimes erupt in drama or poetry. But a close friend of mine is also Dravida Prabhu. I say close. I don't think, from my side, I think close. From his side, I'm probably nobody. But he's always been with, we've done a few things together over the years in terms of poetic dramas. He's always been a kind of little transcendental mentor. I don't always agree with him. And he certainly doesn't agree with me. But I'm not a poet or a writer or anything. But he did touch up one or two of the verses we together, mostly 99%, but he definitely tied it up. So if there's anything good in there, it's probably because of his touching it. Vaishnava sees good in even where there isn't any good, practically speaking. So I'm sure if there was anything good there, it was because of Dravida Prabhu's slight editing. He's so kind to tolerate us, and he does like that. But I don't know. It's just usually when I'm in New Mayapur, I go into Prabhupada's rooms and just I'm blank, and then somehow or another something comes out. And that's what happens every year, pretty much. So somehow or another it's spilled out of this dirty cupboard of my heart. Something came out of it in Prabhupada's association. I don't know, good or bad, whatever. If it in any way inspires somebody, I may get a little bit of mercy, a little bit of good fortune. I don't know. But certainly, Maharaj, thank you so much for your at least encouraging us and appreciation there. At least I'm surprised anyone even bothered reading it. It's quite amazing. What to speak of elevated Vaishnavas. Yeah, sure, Prabhupada. Yeah, I never had any poetic ability or dramatic ability or any kind of ability ever. I was only good at rubbish when I was a youngster. I was interested in gross sense enjoyment, what to do. Prabhupada's mercy sometimes. On a certain level, some little things may come out. A long way to go now. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Prabhupada. Thank you, Maharaj. What else?
So we'll ask His Grace and Naresh Prabhu to.
You must all be very tired over there. What's going on? Late night.
Not yet, Maharaj. So Naresh Prabhu, do you want to say a word of things?
Before I say that, I just like to ask Maharaj one simple question. Maharaj, you mentioned that more important.
Raj, there you go.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Raj, you mentioned that more important than knowledge is the application of knowledge. Can you please elaborate a little bit more on it? It's like a sutta, very stress.
Well, obviously knowledge is important. It's not important. What do you do with the knowledge? You give something to a little kid. The kid knows that lighting matches it creates fire, but you give it to a little tiny kid, don't know how to apply that match. Can be disaster and catch himself or the whole house on fire. How to utilize it properly? A knife, any simple example, very simple. I'm sure you can think of many more sophisticated or relevant examples. It's like that with many things, a little bit of knowledge. A little bit of knowledge can be very dangerous. A little bit of knowledge on a serpent's head doesn't make the serpent glorious. Serpent can become even more dangerous because it looks attractive. So in the spiritual realm also, many people, they have knowledge, but they're misusing that knowledge. They're representing themselves instead of Krishna or their guru. And they're taking that knowledge because people are in ignorance, and they're covering people over. The whole world is full of cheats and cheated like this, So it's knowing the relevance of that knowledge, which we hear from those who know what the real knowledge is and how to apply the knowledge in their lives, like Prabhupada. He gave us thing, don't imitate. In the Upanishad, we hear emphasis, don't imitate. Everyone's got their quota. Everyone has their quota. The Lord has, given us our quota, and we should act accordingly and not try to imitate others. Sometimes we take stuff which is, beyond our eligibility to apply, and we can talk about it, but talk about it in right perspective, not out of perspective. There was a time, for instance, in and David Maharaj, if he's still with us, probably remembers the time only too well in Los Angeles. I don't know if it was 74, 5, or 6, but there was a time.
76.
76. What was it called? The Gopi Bhava Club or something? And these devotees, Prabhupada's books were there. Nectar of Devotion was there. And Chaitanya Charitamrita was coming out. Krishna book was there. Different statements in Srimad Bhagavatam may have been there. And they thought that we could jump. We can become Raganuga Bhaktas. And they were, some of them I've heard, I wasn't there, I know some of them quite well, and some of them are still prominently active in funny ways, but they were engaged in different activities, trying to imitate, as if they could, with this gross material body, with their ignorant consciousness, that I can practice becoming a gopi, or becoming a peacock, or becoming a cow, or whatever it is you want to become. In there, we'll say, think we can become, we're not in a position to understand that. What that is to become a gopi or whatever, but they were practicing it. And when this came to Prabhupada's attention, Prabhupada was enraged. This is the greatest threat to our movement, practically speaking. Then someone said, but we're reading your books, Prabhupada. We're reading it in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Prabhupada was impressed by that. Says you should read the 7th chapter of the Adi Lila, teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and become humble. Be like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I'm a fool. Become humble. So this Tanya says here, it's true. Ultimately, this is our goal, but if we take it out of context, it can be a disaster. If we displease the pure devotee of the Lord, there's no question of making any advancement in spiritual life. Maybe David Maharaj would like to add to that if he's still with us, because he was there at the time.
I can say that they defended themselves to Srila Prabhupada, saying, we're reading your books. They specialized in sections of teachings of Lord Chaitanya about the gopis. And Prabhupada replied, you are misreading my books. Wow. So there's no question of them reading outside literature, other Vaishnava literature, Gaudiya literature. They were only reading Prabhupada's books, yet Prabhupada chastised them. You're misreading my books.
Krishna. We have to hear in the association of devotees, relevant association, and like that, put into practice the relevant instructions therein. That's why association of devotees is so important, to hear properly. Time will come. Well, I don't know about your lives, but you've already gone over your allotted time.
Thank you, Maharaj. On behalf of all the devotees assembled here, and also devotees in Auckland, Greater Auckland, we'd like to thank you very much for taking out your valuable time at this late hour to give us your valuable...
It's early morning over here.
It's late for you. To give us your valuable association, to give us such an in-depth understanding of the Nectar of Devotion. We hope the
pandemic... Nectar of Instruction.
Nectar of Instruction, yeah. Hopefully the pandemic finishes very soon, and we can have a wonderful association here back in Auckland, Maharaj. Thank you very much. Hare
Yours.
Krishna.
I also pray for that day. But whatever, as Prabhupada said, or Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, we are entering into Radhakund by practically applying the essence of Radhakund, which is acting in a way which is pleasing to Srimati Radharani, wherever we are. So whether we can associate physically or not, that association, we can churn that association by tuning in to the holy name, tuning into Srila Prabhupada's instructions. All over the world, we've just had Bhadra Punim. I'm sure you distributed hundreds of sets of Bhagavatams there in New Zealand. I hope. But here in France, Vaisheshika Prabhu told me that although we have no Bhagavatam sets in French, he said, take pre-orders, because this is the best news of the year, that very soon we'll be reprinting the French Bhagavatam set for the first time in 35 years. Yeah, we've raised the money to print it. We had to raise the money. The BBT wasn't willing to take the chance. We raised the money to print the books almost entirely. And they're going ahead now to print, and very soon, we, Krishna willing, up to the Lord ultimately. And we took 200 pre-orders, prepaid orders for Bhagavatam sets in the last month here in France. So something is there, at least. We couldn't distribute many physical sets, but we've taken pretty good. Huh? You go on the street and you say to someone, hey, we got great news for you, man. You know, we're going to be printing this book in 6 months' time, maybe, or 3 months' time. You never know when it's going to be printed, but soon. All you have to do is give us, 150 euros now, and we'll book you for one of these sets. Imagine how many sets you're going to distribute like that. I don't think many people are going to buy that one. They don't buy it even if it's in your face. So what the speaker, in the future, it will be printed. All right. 200 sets have been booked for when they're printing already. So Krishna willing, that will go ahead. So thank you all very much for distributing Prabhupada's books and chanting the holy names during World Holy Name Week, whatever way you could. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo.
His Holiness Janananda Maharaj ki jai. His Holiness Maharaj ki jai.
Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhaktam jai.
Wait for next year when the books are printed. New Zealand, France is going to be one of the top towns in the world if we do 300 sets of Bhagavatam in 1 month. Krishna. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi.
Hari Hari Bo. I think we don't have much time for Nrsimha prayer. So maybe Krishna Prabhu, you can give us program for tomorrow before we end.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, everyone. So tomorrow at 8 o'clock, we will have His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj. It will be a special class. The topic will be exceptional passing of Srila Prabhupada. It's a wonderful. I did attend this class with Maharaj, and I requested if he can come and give it for Auckland devotees or New Zealand devotees. So please join in tomorrow at 8 a.m. And then in the evening, we will have His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu from Singapore joining us and giving the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's for tomorrow. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, excuse me, Kirtan start is 7:30.
Tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah, 7:30 is Kirtan. With Kirtan.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining. We'll see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Srila
Hare
Prabhupada
Krishna.
ki jai. Gaur
Jai.
Bhaktam jai. Hari Bol.
Jai. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hari Bol.